Welcome to the ISP parent and carer community to the A to Z of Future Careers talk series. Today we're very excited to be covering journalism and media and future careers in this area with Kevin Curry from Linfield University. So please go ahead, Kevin, introduce yourself and talk us through this exciting topic.
Greetings, I'm Dr. Kevin Curry, Assistant Professor of Journalism and Media Studies at Linfield University. I teach courses in media production, history and law, media history as well as some media theory courses. I actually have my undergraduate degree from Linfield in mass communications and political science. I was a double major, so I had full majors in both areas. And that really defined who I was in my early career working in political communication, in public relations, as well as in advertising and in film production eventually, before returning to school and deciding that I wanted to be a college professor, getting my PhD, and then being fortunate enough to end up at my alma mater where I teach today. My double major is a good example of what Linfield specializes in, which is education that approaches things from a cross-disciplinary focus. We encourage students to learn from different fields because we believe that in doing so, it makes you a better student, a more prepared student for the future and for any future changes that might be coming along in our world. And so we have a lot of students that double major. We have students that major and minor in something else to get additional experience. So one of the things that, like I said, Linfield believes is that this prepares students for a variety of professions, but also prepares them for lifelong learning because times change, technology changes, the world changes, and different careers are going to crop up that no one even knows exist right now. And so by having an education like the one you get at Linfield, you're prepared to make that pivot and to find the new passion that you might have in terms of a profession. We have more than 50 undergraduate majors, so there's a lot of opportunities for people to connect to different majors. And I also like to mention that alumni from ISP schools are eligible for a $25,000 per year scholarship at Linfield. So we hope you'll consider joining us. So what is included in journalism and media? When we talk about these types of fields, what are we talking about? Well, naturally, we're talking about things you think of when you hear the word journalism, which would be reporting for a newspaper or for a television or for radio, or for these days, reporting for an online streaming company or reporting for an online news organization. So that's traditionally what the journalism aspect of journalism media includes. But it also includes areas outside of news reporting, production for television, production for film, podcasting, other types of audio production, jobs in the music industry. Outside of being an artist, we have people who end up becoming managers or other professionals within the music industry and other entertainment fields like that. It also includes public relations, and we'll talk a little bit about what that is defined as. Strategic communication also falls under that for organizations and for companies. It includes advertising, and of course, it includes social media these days, which is where many of our students end up landing in terms of professions with the growth of social media over the last about 19 years. So universities across the United States might call the school or the program that teaches these types of areas different things. They might call it just journalism. They might call it mass communication. Sometimes it's often called just communication, and others might call it media studies. So as you're looking for a place to study journalism and media, keep that in mind and be sure to examine what programs are available under the banner, the different name that the university might actually call it. So what are some important skills that employers are looking for in journalism and media? Well, one of the big ones is storytelling generally. We teach our students how to tell good stories, regardless of whether the story is a news story or a nonfiction type of story about a person or a place or an event, or if it's a creative fiction type of story. So maybe it is a film or a television show or even a fiction podcast, for example. So we like to, in all of our classes, really work on storytelling skills for students. What makes a good story? What kind of structure makes a good story, and those types of things. And secondly, writing. Being able to write well is going to help you in any career that you go into, but it's especially important in journalism and media. It really is kind of the anchor area that makes you successful in any of the aspects of journalism and media that you might happen to go into. And so being a good writer and improving your writing and learning different styles of writing so that you're flexible and you can take on different type of assignments when you get out into your career. The third area is visual communication, and this includes both video and photography. So being able to produce videos, short videos, as well as longer ones, is a valuable skill that really complements any other skill that you're going to learn in the field of journalism and media. Reporters these days, for example, often, in addition to going to the scene of a story and interviewing people and writing the story, are also in charge of taking photos at the scene of the story, or shooting a small interview on your phone, for example, with someone involved in the story that then would become a companion to the written story that you do. And so having good visual communication skills are really important. Even if you think you're going to go into journalism specifically and be a traditional reporter that writes, having this skill is going to make you more employable. It's going to give you a leg up against any competition that you have. Also, in a similar way, is audio communication. With the advent of podcasting and the growth of podcasting as a form of audio production, it's become more likely that people are going to add that as a component to the piece, even if, again, it's a written piece. And so learning how to properly ask questions and to cut audio, that's what we call editing, is cutting audio. That is going to make you a better employee, and again, make you more competitive for the jobs after you graduate. And of course, there's still traditional areas where audio communication occurs, like in radio news, either traditional broadcast radio or online radio approaches that distribute their content in terms of audio. And then one of the last areas that's an important skill is graphic design. So this is useful not just for printing or designing a newspaper, but it's also for maybe designing a mailer, something that's sent through the mail that's a piece of advertising or a promotional piece, or designing a poster that helps promote or market an organization or something like that. And then graphic design is extremely useful online. So students that we have might go on to design websites, but even if they aren't designing full websites, still having graphic design ability makes them more valuable, as they can get assignments for designing social media posts, for example. So graphic design is another very important skill for students that are interested in journalism and media. So here's some popular careers, and then we're going to walk through these real quick. So I'll just briefly touch on them here, and then I'll touch on them a little bit more as we walk through, and I tell you about some of our students that have gone into these fields recently. So it opens the doors, as I said, for many different careers, but they all share kind of the core skills that I just discussed. So the areas that we'll be looking at include journalism, traditional journalism, online media content for companies or organizations, social media, advertising, public relations, and some adjacent fields that you may not consider, but end up to be really good opportunities for people that have degrees in journalism and media, things like law and marketing and small business ownership. All right, so let's start with journalism. And when we talk about journalism, we're thinking about that traditional journalism field. So reporting the news for newspapers, online news organizations, as well as for television and for radio. So the types of skills that I mentioned earlier that would be very valuable when it comes to a career in journalism, of course, includes storytelling, primarily, you need to be able to tell good stories in order to be a journalist. You need to be able to identify what makes good stories. If you're covering a news event, there's something that might be happening right then, or you're investigating something. You need to know what's the best way for me to tell the story so my audience understands what's going on, but also that my audience is interested. They want to read the story and get that information. So storytelling is an important one. Writing, of course, is very important when it comes to journalism, whether you're doing written stories for newspaper or online, or you're writing scripts for television or writing scripts for radio. You need to be a good writer in order to be successful in journalism. Visual production, this could also be, this is actually similar to what I mentioned before about video. So how do I take a good photo or shoot a good video that might either be a companion to my written piece, or if I'm doing television news, I'm framing the shot properly and I'm cutting it together in a short video that helps tell the story. So being able to produce content visually is very important. Graphic design I mentioned previously. Again, you might be doing smaller bits of it under journalism. You may not be designing the whole newspaper. However, you might be designing the whole newspaper. There are people that end up going into those fields, and that becomes their expertise area, and they become very successful in those fields of graphic design. So it's very valuable to have that skill. And then finally, critical thinking. And this kind of wraps up really kind of like all of these pieces. So we want people to be able to think critically about the information that they're given. How do I choose what's the best information? What questions do I need to ask people when I'm telling stories? All of that falls under this area of critical thinking and is going to make people more successful in journalism. So I just want to mention a couple of our recent alumni from Linfield University who are actually working in journalism today. One is Camille Botello. She graduated in 2020, and right now she is the associate editor at the Rye Record, which is in a small town, I believe in New York, just outside of New York City. So she's working as an editor there at a small town newspaper. Previous to that, not long, just a year ago, she was the digital editor at the Bronx Times. The Bronx is one of the 5 boroughs of New York City, and they have their own newspaper, and that's where Camille got her start, actually, coming out of Linfield. The other person that I would like to mention is Alex Jensen, who graduated in 2020. She is currently a digital content producer for KGW Television. This is a Portland, Oregon station. Linfield University is located in McMinnville, Oregon, about an hour away from Portland. So Alex is in Portland now, and she is producing news for KGW Television, a broadcast station here in Oregon. Previous to that, she was a reporter and a multimedia producer at what was called the Daily Journal of Commerce. And that was a newspaper primarily, I believe they still have printed editions and online editions. And it was a newspaper that specialized in like business news specifically. And that's where Alex first got her start when she graduated from Linfield, and now has recently moved from print journalism, written journalism, over now to working in television. So she's a good example of how having a combination of all these skills makes you a good candidate to be able to change to other types of jobs that are similar. Online and social media, creating stories and content for companies and organizations is really a growing area of journalism and media. And we find a lot of our students end up landing here. And so again, the key knowledge is going to be very similar because you're writing content, you're creating visual pieces, whether photos or videos, for both the online, like the web presence, the websites of companies or organizations, but also for their social media channels. And so you're taking the written and visual and storytelling skills that you've learned, and instead you're applying them to companies and organizations. I always like to say and organizations because nonprofit organizations in the United States are ones that might be a charitable organization or something like that. They are a great place for students to end up landing in terms of jobs as well, because they're mission-driven organizations where they can use their skills for a cause that they care about, for example. But also companies, traditional companies that sell products or services are a great place to be, great place to land for students. So the 2 examples I'll share with you: Alexander Feller, class of 2022 here at Linfield. She's a content specialist at a company that actually supports other companies, including Nike. She's written for content for many of Nike's different phone applications, their phone apps for sales, for their social media, and for their website, as well as for a film production company called Catalyst Studios. And Alexandra actually was really focused on journalism here when she was at Linfield. She was the editor of our Linfield Review, which is our student newspaper. She did an internship within a newspaper here in the state of Oregon. But when she landed in this job, she felt that it really provided kind of the same joy and the same creativity that she could get out of journalism. Someday I could see her going back to journalism because she still really loves the field. And then the second person I'll mention is Catherine Canfield, the class of 2023. And right now she's the manager of marketing and creative services for the South Carolina Stingrays, which is a hockey team, an athletic team. And Catherine was one of those double majors I mentioned to you before. She majored in journalism and media studies here at Linfield, but then also in sport management in our business school because she wanted to work for an athletic team. And that's where she was able to land for her first job. So excited to see where she takes that work. And she's doing all kinds of things for hockey team in South Carolina. Let's talk a little bit about advertising, which is a little bit different than the last slide. It's really developing and planning, producing, and implementing advertising content and plans that are designed to promote a product, to sell a good, or to promote maybe a film or music that's coming out or something like that. So paid advertising that you see on your phone, on a streaming, while you're watching a show on a streaming service, et cetera. That's what we're talking about when we talk about advertising. And again, you'll see that you have the same type of basic key knowledge and skill areas. But I've added in here organization and planning, because that's really, for a student that's really good at that type of thing and putting plans together and working with teams, this is a great opportunity. Advertising is a really good field for them to go into. And the example that I use this time is Kevin Nelson from the class of 2016. Kevin is right now the account supervisor at Glow Social and Digital Agency, which is a national brand here in the United States. And they do advertising, marketing, and promotion with other media brands like film studios or other platforms like television streamers, Peacock, Apple TV, for example. They've done work with the NBA. And those companies will hire Glow to help promote a new product that's coming out. So maybe it's a new television show, or for the NBA, it might just be generally the NBA, or it might be for the NBA championship game, the National Basketball Association championship game. And so Kevin is an account supervisor, which is a really interesting role because he's the go-between, the person right between the company, like the NBA, and the team at Glow that are putting the plan together, and they're creating the content, and they're making the advertising, and they're buying the advertising. And Kevin works in the middle as the account supervisor. So he's the go-between between the two sides to make sure that the plan is being executed properly and that the client is happy with the work that's being done, et cetera. And so it's a really interesting position. Kevin originally started in sports broadcasting, and he worked a little bit in athletics as well in terms of athletics communication. And then he landed at a different advertising agency and now has gone into Glow Social and Digital Agency. Another good example of how skills are transferable in terms of different types of jobs. Let's talk a little bit about public relations. So public relations is strategic communications. They're plans and activities that help build relationships between an organization and a company or an individual, and their publics. And what we mean by that is that, each company might have a different type of public, many different publics. So we think of the general public, just who the person is that might be interested in that company. But also they might have a public like, if it's a publicly traded company, they have investors, or they might have clients they want to communicate with. They may also have their own employees can be considered an audience. So public relations is a strategic communication area that helps those groups message to those different audiences. And so that you have this mutually beneficial relationship between them. So you can see some of the similar areas that I've mentioned before. Writing is very important in public relations. Organization and planning, similar to advertising, is very important. but also like customer relations. It's really kind of a customer relations type of job at a higher level where you're doing it on a bigger scale. And then I mentioned critical thinking as well, which really should be on every one of these slides because it's valuable for everything. So let me give you a couple examples of people that are working in very different areas of public relations. One is Rosa Johnson, the class of 2017, and she's the Assistant Director of Customer Communication at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. We call that SeaTac here in the United States, and it is one of the biggest airports on the West Coast. It's up near Seattle, Washington. And Rosa started there as an intern while she was in college and then got a job and has just worked her way up in customer communication. And so she and her team help message through things like social media and the website to people that are going to the airport because they're catching flights, and the important things that they may need to know about parking or delays or how to speed up your trip to the airport. So it's an interesting area that maybe people don't think about, but public relations serves a really important role for places like airports. And then the second one is Ben O'Loughlin. He's from the class of 2022, and he's the operations manager at Trend, PR, branding, and social media. And this is a small company down in Hollywood, California, that focuses on the music industry. And so they have music artists, musicians, and bands that they help promote and build connections with their fans, build connections with music critics and things like that. So very different, but the same type of skills that Rosa does for Seattle-Tacoma Airport. And finally, I just wanted to mention a couple adjacent fields because a lot of people will get a degree in journalism and media studies, and they'll end up going into something different. But the skills that they've learned here are valuable, really, kind of in any kind of field you go into. And so, again, writing, organizational planning, critical thinking are all important things that we teach in journalism and media that will prepare you for other fields. And the person I wanted to mention is Helen Lee from the class of 2017 here at Linfield. She's a staff attorney, so she's a lawyer for the Oregon Legislative Council. And the Oregon Legislative Council is a group of lawyers at the Oregon Legislature. And the Oregon Legislature is the state government, the elected state government for the state of Oregon. And she's a staff person that helps those elected officials draft legislation, draft bills, laws that they want to pass, make sure that the laws that they're working on are legal and that fit. So she advises those kinds of people on the legality of what they want to do as elected officials. She, after Linfield, went directly to get her law degree from Lewis and Clark Law School. So she knew that she wanted to go into law, and she found value in getting the degree here in journalism and media. So in the United States, at least, to get into law school, you don't have to take a pre-law degree. You don't have to take political science, which a lot of people do. Really, you can major in anything you want to prepare yourself to go to law school. And Helen found value in having that be journalism and media. But we have people that go on into many other fields. I mentioned nonprofits earlier. We have nonprofit executives. We have people that have gone into real estate. So it's a lot of options coming out of journalism and media, in addition to the areas that we've discussed that are very specific to journalism and media. So some quick advice for success in these fields. How can students be successful? First one is just become good communicators generally. So that includes written communication, but also visual communication. It also means good spoken communication. So we encourage a lot of our students to take classes in speech and things like that in order to be good communicators generally. Secondly, and I'm kind of alluded to this throughout, but learn several different skills, especially writing, audio, video editing. A lot of students come to us now already knowing a little bit about audio and video editing, which is nice. Shooting photos and video, encourage students to do that and to practice that and to get better at it. It makes you stronger and it makes you a better candidate for any position you're going to go for. Be flexible early in your career. You likely aren't going to land your perfect job right away, but you can work towards it and you can take steps in early career jobs to get to the job that you want to get. The other reason to be flexible is this last thing, is that you may discover that there's a job that you didn't even know existed, or that you get an experience trying out that you realize that's what I really enjoy. I thought I wanted to do something in one area, but then I realized, no, really, this was my passion. This was what happened in many ways for me professionally. I graduated thinking I was going to go into sports broadcasting, but eventually I landed instead in political communication, where I worked for several years. And then I did some general advertising and PR work. And then I was a partner in a video production company. And all along, I was teaching classes here and there, and I decided finally that what I really wanted to do was to be a college professor. And so later, really fairly late in my life, I went back to college to get my PhD so that I could teach and help other students. And so being flexible allows you also to discover those jobs that you may never know are going to be the favorite thing that you ever do in your life. So thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to learn a little bit about journalism and media. If you're interested in Linfield, here's a little bit of information. You can contact our Associate Director of Admissions, who handles specifically international students. So here's her contact information. And thank you so much, and good luck in your decision as you choose where you want to go to university.
Well, thank you very much for that session. We were discussing before the record button was hit that this is very close to my own heart because I studied journalism myself, and I'm not a journalist at the moment. But what I found with the degree that I had from the journalism degree that I had was the transferability, you know, the ability to look at a job description and think, oh yeah, I can probably do that and that and that because, you know, I've got the skills through the journalism course. You know, I can write a newsletter, I can go into marketing, I can do this. So it's such a broad and diverse option to study, isn't it? But one key area that I think you mentioned at the end, and it was the word passion
Mhm.
as well. And you know, your passion took you to where you are today. One of your students, is it Camille Bitello? I wrote down her name. You know, she's got the job that I envy the most. You know, working in the music industry. That's what I wanted to do, but never really went down that route. So, what advice would you, you know, give to parents about, you know, homing in on areas of passion of students? Because it's evident in the stories that you've shared:
Mhm.
athletics, sports,
Right.
music, travel, I assume, for the lady in PR,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Yeah.
So you know, how important is that, and you know, how can parents help identify, you know, help their child identify those passions as well?
So I think the first thing is to, get the knowledge and skills, the basic knowledge and skills, because as you said, those are gonna be transferable to anything. And then allow the students to look into other areas and to try out other things. I mentioned that a lot of our students have 2 majors or get a major and a minor, and that's a great way to explore another area, is to get a minor in a different field that you think might prepare you for, something else. And also, it's just learn about it as much as you can, like, on your own. So the person who's in the music industry, like, we don't teach a specific class on how to be a PR person for music, but they took opportunities to get an internship in the music industry. So to try it out, that's another great way to do it. That's like a low risk way. It's like go work for a few months in an internship and learn what it takes to do that job, and that will help you kind of decide. Okay, that is something I want to pursue. I've had people, we've had students who've come back from internships and been like, I'm glad I did that, and now I know I don't want to do that job because, they thought they knew what it entailed, but once they got in, they realized, "Oh, it's not really, kind of what I was hoping to do." So yeah, I would encourage them to be curious about different areas and different fields and find ways to learn about them. That could be through internships. We also encourage our students to do informational interviews, and that's something that students could do at the high school level for sure. So you are interested in a certain field, find a connection to somebody who works in that field, maybe through your parents or through some friends, and ask them for a few minutes just to interview them. The good thing is most people are really excited to help other students kind of discover what they want to do and will like to talk about their jobs. And so make it a phone call or a cup of coffee or something, and sit down with them and just learn about their own journey and what they love about their job, and any advice they might have. And that's a really also a great way that we use all the time with students to connect with, in particular, our alumni who work in those fields to learn more about what that field entails.
Yeah, absolutely. And where your students go on to can be very, very inspiring for other students.
Yeah,
But sometimes it's a process of elimination, isn't it? It's
yeah,
about experiencing and understanding, okay, what does it mean if I go that direction?
right.
At ISP, that's really important for us. We have the international learning opportunities for students, ILOS,
Mm,
running across different schools. They have different programs. They have an ISP filmmaker, they have the ISP scientist, chess maker, all these lovely programs that students can actually dip their toes into these
yeah,
experiences and actually, you know, persevere if they're keen, or make a decision of, yeah, maybe science is not for me. But it gives
yeah.
them, it validates the decision to go one direction or the other, and it helps them develop that passion, which is fantastic. Um, okay, so in terms of, the parents listening here today, do you have any other final thoughts or summaries in terms of, sitting down with their children and talking about journalism? I have to say, I wasn't massively encouraged to do journalism when I was choosing it, but I'm so glad that I chose it as a choice, because it has given me a lot of options, and I think that's what I take from the degrees, is the options and the skills
Mhm.
to look at different pathways. And I've worked for a media company. I've worked for within education quite a lot as well, and in the travel industry. One day I will become a full-blown journalist as well, I hope. But yeah, for parents listening today, so your final thoughts and summary on that.
I think that a lot of times students might get too kind of laser focused on only the things that they have heard of or kind of like are tangible in some ways to them. So we have a really good nursing program, for example, and a lot of students will come in because, well, I know what a nurse does, so I will go into nursing. I know that's a good job. And then we've had students who've done that and then realized, you know, through the experience in the first semester or 2, that isn't what they wanna do. That it isn't their passionate area, but they've taken a class in another area, sometimes journalism, sometimes someplace else, and they're like, "That's what really I'm interested in doing." So, encouraging students to not kinda get tunnel vision about just one career, 1 or 2 careers because they know that. That's kind of the safe thing, I think. There is a little bit of uncertainty in saying, "I wanna go into this other field," but encourage students to check out those as many options, I guess, is what is possible. And I think in journalism that, in many ways, it's journalism and media, it's somewhat easy because we see it all, we engage with it so much that there might even be a piece of what they're seeing online or they're watching as a streaming show or they're listening to a podcast and just thinking, someone makes that. In fact, many people make that. And what are the different pieces that might go into making a television show, for example? I mean, there's dozens of different jobs you can have within television. So, be curious, allow them to be curious, encourage them to be curious, and not just kind of be tunnel vision on like one specific area.
Yes, very wise words. And one of the slogans of ISP is, curious and confident minds, and supporting our students to adopt curious, confident minds and be open-minded, and be confident to make those decisions. So it's really, really exciting to have you validate that for us as well. So thank you very much, Dr. Kevin. We've really, really enjoyed that session. Obviously, the details there, if any parents want to reach out and learn more. And obviously, the information is all on the website as well. And I wish you all the best with your role at Linfield. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.